Hi everyone, hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Elvis, and in this video, I'm going to go through these new features added to the Anthropic Console. So, the Anthropic Console is the equivalent of the OpenAI Playground if you're familiar with that. Anthropic is adding a lot of really interesting features, such as automating the process of creating prompts and testing those prompts and evaluating as well prompts, and you can do that side by side now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through all these different new features that were announced today. And then I'm going to also show you a demo of how these features can be used. And I will also provide some of my thoughts on where things are headed with all these new features that Anthropic is adding and how it might be useful for you, as well as how I am thinking about using them. So what we see here is the dashboard in Anthropic, right? So this is the default dashboard screen, and apparently you need to enter a credit card to be able to access this feature of generating a prompt. And so do that first. So what we can do is we can click on that. So the idea here is to automate the process of prompt engineering, essentially, right? You have a task and you can give it like a high level task description, and that will be converted into a high quality prompt. And this automation, by the way, happens through chain of thought reasoning. And so it figures out how to create a really high quality prompt for your task based on how it can reason about the high level description that you're giving it. So what you input here is really important, right? You can get very specific. You can try slowly, just describing your task. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to use what they provided here. So I'm just going to try out the summarize a document. And this one says summarize documents into 10 bullet points max. And this is very typical with summarization tasks. So you want to summarize it and you want a specific formatting, which in this case is 10 bullet points. And that's the max that we want. And so notice here that prompt generation consumes a small number of Cloud 3.5 Sonnet tokens. So it's Cloud 3.5 Sonnet that's really backing all of this process. You can hit generate prompt, and this starts the process. Unlike other playgrounds that you would use today, like the OpenAI playground, right? All of this process, you have to do it manually, right? And iterating through prompts can be very difficult if you don't understand how to format prompts, add the right components to a prompt. There are essential components that you might have to add, such as structuring your prompt and formatting your prompt and using variables wherever you need to. All that process is being automated through all of these features by Anthropic. So what I got here is the generated prompt, and the prompt says you're tasked with summarizing a document into a maximum of 10 bullet points. Here's a document to be summarized. So this is the summarized document that goes in this variable. So notice it's using these tags as well. In other places, you will call these like delimiters, just to specify that this is the document that we're talking about and that should be summarized. And then specifically, it says, please follow these instructions to create an effective summary. So I think this is very typical of a summarization task that's based on a document. You specify in details what you want in the instructions, and it'd be great if you can do that in like a list format like this. That's very common to see with this type of task, as I mentioned. It's following a good format as far as I can tell. So I'll just hit continue here. And you can see now it sends us right into Workbench. So now we're in the Workbench section of the console. So here's the system prompt. We won't touch on that here because we want to cover all the other new features like evaluation and generating test use cases. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the run process. So notice that it created this test variable, right? And it has this little icon right here, and you can click on that icon and it takes you to variables. So you can automatically generate information or examples for those variables as well. So if you didn't have like an example document and all you wanted is to test this prompt really quickly, which is really important in developing these prompts for your applications. So what you can do is you can just hit generate here, and this will generate or auto-populate this variable. It will use the model. It would try to use this generation logic, which is also automatically generated for you, but you can edit it as well. So you can edit this if something doesn't look right, or maybe you want something to be more specific, or you have a specific criteria for the generation logic for how it generates this document. You may want to provide that here. But this is, again, the generation logic. It'll be good to read through this and make sure that it's satisfying the criteria that you have for the document that you want to pass and you want to test on. So this one generates a really long document. I'm not going to go through it all, but this one is apparently from the rise of artificial intelligence in healthcare. And again, what you're doing here is that you may not have these document examples yet. Maybe you're starting out like a completely new product. So what you can do is you can generate these test cases and just run it. So in a way, you are using an LLM to synthesize test cases, which is really cool. And you will see how we can evaluate as well these prompts in a bit. So here it is, the response. Here's my summary of the document in 10 bullet points. So it's definitely following that criteria. And it says summary. And so you can see that summary. If you want these out, you can probably add a separate instruction to get these out of here, because this is very common with the cloud models. Okay, looks good. I think these are 10 bullet points. You can also check the text format as well. This one is Markdown. You check the text format and you can see how it's summarizing everything. Now, I haven't went through the entire document, so I don't know how accurate this is, but I'm assuming it should be accurate based on what it generated. Okay, so from here, we can go different directions, but one of the features I want to call out here is the one that is being highlighted here, which is to evaluate. Notice that here we have a prompt and it's version 1. So if you do changes on this prompt, for instance, if you wanted to get rid of the summary tag here, and that's important for you, we can do that. And then what it will do is it will generate a version 2 for you. And so you can have 2 versions, of this prompt that you're working on or iterating on, and then you can evaluate that and compare both of these prompts. So for now, let's just look at the evaluate feature and just focus on this version 1 prompt. And we can show the prompt here. So you click on evaluate, show the prompt. It shows you the prompt, it tells you it's version 1, and then it has this additional add comparison here. Now, if you had another version of this prompt, you can put both of them together, and then you can compare here. So typically how companies do this, right, and teams working on LLMs and doing these prompt engineering efforts, they usually use like a Excel sheet or an Excel file where they document and maintain all these prompt versions along with the models that are being used, the checkpoints, right? And then the model temperature and all the different parameters that are being used. Once you have that there, then you can do sort of like rating. You can ask like subject matter experts to rate this for you. And all of that now is self-contained here. So you don't really need to use something like an Excel file anymore. You can do that and you can auto-generate more cases. So what's interesting here is that, okay, you have the prompt, right? You have the document that was generated as an example, and then you have the model response, which is this one. And what you can do as well, you can rate it, right? So let's say I'll just, for example's sake here, I'm going to rate this as good. So you can see it's averaging out here, it's 3. And then I can add a row here and then add more examples. But let's say that I'm lazy, maybe, or I don't have enough examples. Maybe I can use the LLM to generate the examples for me. And this is where it becomes really powerful, this idea of generating these test cases or automatically generating them. So I'm going to delete this one. Delete, because you can that manually. You can also import test cases as well. So you can import a CSV file that contains information about those documents. But right now, what I'm going to show you is this new feature called generate test case. So I'm going to generate the test case, right? And you can edit the generation logic if you need to. So we're going to generate the test case. And you can see how it generated the test case. And we can generate more, right? We can keep generating more. And as you generate more, now this is a little bit different, right? You can go here and now you can test this and you can run it. So for now, it's waiting a bit. Now it's ready to run, and you can click here or you can click here. You can run this, and now it's going to generate a model response. So as it's doing this, then you can kind of compare between the two, right? And then you can give it a score. As an example, I'll just say, okay, this is very good. And you can see now how it's going to be averaging this out. And where this becomes really powerful now is that you're iterating on this prompt, and you may have, like I said, different versions of this. And I'm going to go to my prompt, and then let's say I would want to add a separate instruction here to use too much descriptive words. That's kind of vague, but I just wanted to show you the example of the prompt itself. And I'm going to run this. And so when I run this, because now it's a little bit different because I changed the prompt, it generates a version 2 for me. And now it generates a different response for me as well. So now when I go to evaluate, And you can see here we have the model response for that article, which is this document, and it's using version 2 as a default. So it will use the last one as a default for this prompt. But know what I can do here, which is really interesting. I can choose the version of this prompt. So I can go back to version 1, and you can see now it has stored those numbers. With each iteration of this prompt, I can go again and score this, right? I can score it very good. And then I can run more test cases for this. So I can go run this one, and I can use these two model responses to compare. Again, this is what you would typically do, and you would use something like an Excel sheet for this, where you compare and you have it in columns and you have nicely organized. And this is how we work with teams and develop really powerful prompts for their use cases. But now all of this has been sort of built in here in the Anthropic console, which is, I think, really, really powerful, because this is essentially the workflow for iterating on prompts and improving those prompts on the tasks you may be interested in. I think this is really powerful. This resonates a lot with me as someone that does a lot of prompt engineering. I like the idea of auto generation as well, because sometimes you don't have examples. But I would say, like with every other use case that relies on synthetically generated data, especially from LLMs, there might be biases. You may notice that these documents, right, might be very generic. So you may want to sort of also try to edit these documents yourself, or maybe add additional things to it. So it's not going to take you too much work to generate it. And keep in mind, right, these are long documents, may be really hard and time consuming to generate them. And so for every use case, there's going to be different benefits that you're getting from the auto generation tools that they're offering here. So this is really powerful. I'm excited about this. I think OpenAI as well should have something like this in their playground. I have seen very similar features like this in AI Spellbook. Spellbook is just another tool where you can do this type of iteration on prompts, and you can compare and you can evaluate. You can even do entire evaluation on data sets where you get measure like the accuracy and so on. So Spellbook is really cool for that. And I think that's the direction here. Again, it's about iterating, building applications faster, because this process can be very tedious. Generally speaking, when we're building applications with LLMs, right, it's not just about building the inference, but also having a way to iterate on prompts really fast and collaborate on those prompts with your teams. Congrats to Anthropic. I think they're making excellent tools for AI engineers and LLM developers. That'll be it for this video. Hopefully you learned something and this was useful. And if you do use it, let me know in the comments what you think about it. Consider leaving a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.